Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast. On today's show, I have Scott Bonavita, who is running for judge locally in Group
31.
31. So previously we had on Greg Green, who's running for that group. Now we have on Scott. Right now it's a two-person race, and he's come in today to talk to us a little bit about his history in the courtroom and outside of the courtroom, as well as his campaign for the circuit court bench. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
So I haven't had the opportunity to practice against you before, but I did have an opportunity to kind of check out your bio on your website. And obviously the biggest thing that stood out was your soccer career.
Yeah, a lot of people notice that.
Yeah. So were you born in Florida or did you move here?
No, I was actually born in upstate New York, Glens Falls, New York.
Okay.
Moved down here with my family when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So basically grew up in Tampa Bay area, went to elementary school here, middle school, high school at Gaither. So
Was law in your family or were you the
absolutely
first one?
not. I was actually the first person in my family to ever graduate from college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, and actually once I got my bachelor's degree eventually from the University of South Florida in psychology, my father went back to school, got his degree in sociology, got his master's degree in sociology, and now is actually a instructor over at HCC.
Wow, so you're actually a good example for your father.
Yeah, I guess so.
kind of backwards. That's great.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the discussions you guys have, sociology and a psychology major.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So are you an only child or
I have a half sister.
okay? Is
Yeah.
she local or is she?
She isn't. She lives up in New York currently right now.
Oh, okay.
She's actually a legal recruiter.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So you went to high school. You said Gaither around here. When did you start the soccer? Was that just little league or high school or?
I actually started playing soccer probably towards like the fifth or sixth grade when I was in school. I used to go to the West Tampa Boys Club a lot after school. They'd send a bus to the school, they'd pick you up, and you'd go there. At the time, my dad worked in the mall, so he'd have to work till later at night. And I played football originally when I was younger, and I was a defensive tackle.
Okay.
And the defensive coach was recruited to coach the soccer team.
So he just pulled over a bunch of people.
Yeah, I was an athletic kid, and he was like, hey, he didn't really know anything about coaching soccer, as most people who coach soccer back there didn't know.
Right.
And he was like, well, would you be willing to come over and play soccer? And I did.
Was it goalkeeper? I saw was kind of where you ended up.
It's actually where I started.
So you just stuck it out.
Yeah, I started there, and then I started playing soccer with a guy in my neighborhood. I lived in an apartment complex at the time. His name was Frankie Cardinelli. I still remember him.
That's a very Tampa last name.
Yeah, and I made the Black Watch travel soccer organization. My first year, they had a goalkeeper who was already there, so I actually played on the field my first year. And then from there on out, played goalkeeper. Yeah.
Wow, I played goalkeeper elementary, not in high school, but I always used to get yellow cards because every time I stopped the goal, my mouth would just start going. I always get the yellow card.
Yeah.
My coach told me I had to keep my mouth shut. But so after high school, was it USF? You said?
Actually, had a lot of scholarship opportunities to go to different schools to play soccer. I ended up going to the University of Tampa, playing for Tommy Fitzgerald. Played my sophomore year. I had two other goalkeepers that were seniors that were on the team, but I still played in about 5 games. Managed in my freshman year to go unscored upon.
I saw that on the bio. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
so I had a little bit of a big head, I would think you would say, from playing soccer. I'd had a lot of success, so I left to try and pursue a professional soccer career. Actually got onto the Rowdies soon
I
after
saw that. Not to date you, but what time? When are we talking your college career?
I graduated high school in 87, so
Okay.
I went to UT right after that, and then I played for the Rowdies about 89, 90, 91.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Growing up here, the Rowdies have always, been the team. There was a blip on the radar with the mutiny, but the Rowdies were always your one soccer outlet. University of Tampa, I don't know, do you stay in touch with the school much or go by it ever?
Not currently. I mean, I go by it and stuff, but I haven't been in there.
It's become a huge campus,
Yeah.
versus what would have been when you were there. I mean,
Definitely.
I oftentimes when I drive home, I'll go down Boulevard, and it's crazy. I went to University of Central Florida, which this school looks a lot nicer than that does, and that the class size is probably about 10 times to one here, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really, I mean, not to date us, but I mean, it's really amazing all the changes the universities have made in Florida. I mean, I actually went to UCF for soccer
Oh,
camp
did
when
you?
I was younger, so I remember it was really primarily a commuter school, a lot like USF was, but
Yeah, in the mid
there's,
'80s, I don't even know what it would have looked like.
yeah, it wasn't attractive.
Right.
We'll
Yeah.
say
Well, it
that.
wasn't much better when I was there from '94 to '98, but yeah.
Yeah.
So then the Rowdies. So the Rowdies would have been. Did you say 90,
The
91?
like 89 to 92.
Anybody on the team that I would have known from
Oh,
them?
absolutely. When I first started playing, do you remember Winston DuBose?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the starting
Oh,
goalkeeper.
wow.
So my first year I was playing, I was back up to Winston DuBose, which to me, I was playing with my hero growing up as a kid. I mean, I literally was a ball boy in Tampa Stadium for the Rowdies when Winston DuBose was playing.
Right. Right.
And now I'm on the same team with him. Perry Vanderbeck was still playing. Steve Wegerle was the coach. Rodney Marsh was the general manager. So I mean, it's like a dream come true for a guy like me.
Now they went. Didn't they stop for a couple years, or wasn't there a period of time where they weren't playing?
Right. So what happened is my second year, I was slated to be the starter. Ended up tearing up my shoulder real bad in the beginning of the season. Had to have basically reconstructive surgery on it. So I was done. The following season, the league folded and the team folded, and there was like a 2-year hiatus where there was no professional soccer at all. To speak of in the United States. There was still some indoor soccer leagues and stuff like that, but it was real small. And then the MLS came about with the mutiny and whatnot. So
And haven't they been flirting with trying to make the Rowdies an MLS team?
they have been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that it's kind of gone around and around and around.
Right.
I've been a moderate soccer fan, but I have a lot of people in my family and friends who are huge fans. So always kind of the information trickles down. But I went and visited my cousin a couple years ago in Atlanta, and the traffic was bananas. I was like, "What's going on? Is there a Braves game today? Is there a Falcons game today?" And they're like, "No, it's a soccer team. The soccer team in Atlanta supposedly
Yeah.
brings out just a ridiculous amount of people, and I'm hearing that that's happening more and more. So
Well, Orlando's huge too.
Yeah.
With their team there, they do a real good job. But what they've been doing and what is smart, as opposed to trying to put these teams into huge football stadiums that hold 70, 80,000 and try and fill those, are making more soccer-specific stadiums that are like 20,000
so
people.
you can have more of an intimate. Everybody feels
Right.
like they're in it, not enough ghost
So,
town.
so yeah, it's a better atmosphere for the game, you know. And even if you go over to Europe, that's how the stadiums are. You might think in your mind, oh, it's a European league, it's like 60,000 stadium. No, most of them are like 20, 30,000 seat stadiums.
And I can confirm that because I was in England and Scotland last week, and I drove by about 6 or 7 of them. But the funniest thing was the day that we were going to Scotland, my wife and I were walking around in I think it was Newbury. I don't remember where it was, but we ended up in a bar, and we could barely get inside. And it was Saturday morning, and I was like, "What's going on here?" It was Oxford. And they're like, Sunderland's in Oxford today. And so everybody from the Sunderland club gets on the train at like 6 a.m. in the morning, comes down to Oxford. And literally, they just set up shop in these bars and they hang their flags everywhere. And I have a buddy, his name's Dave Sweeney. He's Irish, he's from Ireland. And I was texting him, and he's like, he was telling me about the hooligans for the ultras, I guess, or the fans for Sunderland. He's like, watch out for the ultras and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
it was crazy. Like, more fervor than I've seen for any Bucks game in my life. For
Oh, yeah.
for these two relatively B-level soccer teams. So, but I mean, it's serious over there.
Definitely, definitely.
So then, when the team went on hiatus, that was the end of your soccer career.
Yeah, well, after I got injured, I mean, I think it was a real wake-up call for me. To be honest, back then, guys didn't make a lot of money playing soccer. A lot of them had second jobs and whatnot. So I was like, I got to get back to school. I got to go back to school. So that's when I went to USF.
And that's where you wrapped up your undergraduate.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did the seed of law school enter the picture?
I graduated from undergrad with a psychology degree, and quite frankly, can't do much with an undergrad
it's like a
psychology
philosophy
degree. Yeah. So went to work with a buddy of mine named Brian Boyer, who owns a company called Datacom, still owns it here in town, and did like network sales and things of that nature to some people. And other businesses and whatnot, and then actually took a job with Verizon up in Atlanta doing the same kind of work. And just realized one day is like, I just really want to do something else with my life other than work in a cubicle and
Right.
try and sell people wiring and technology products, you
Right.
know. So started looking around at what I was interested in, and I think that what initially attracted me to the practice of law, to be honest with you, was two things. One, I think inherently, if you are going to practice law, you have to have somewhere within you the desire to want to help people out.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that. I wanted to make an impact on people's lives. I wanted to help them out. The second part of the practice of law that I kind of liked at that time was the competitive nature of it. Kind of replaced the athletic competitive nature of
For
what
sure.
I was
Yeah,
doing.
there's definitely
So started looking into law schools, applied to a few, was accepted to a few of them. But St. Thomas offered me some scholarship money to go down there. So I went to St. Thomas.
And when you finished at St. Thomas, you didn't look to work down there. You came back here, or
Well, I went to St. Thomas. Another reason they offered me some scholarship money, but also they had a dual enrollment program going on at the time where you could get your master's in science and sports administration.
oh wow,
So I got my master's in science and sports administration and my JD degree at the same time, and completed all my credits in 2.5 years. I basically went to school straight for 2.5 years, didn't take any summers off or anything.
yeah, that's what I did too at Stetson. They had the you could do the MBA dual enrollment, but I was on the trial team, and they kind of frowned on trial team and MBA. Which, in retrospect, I wish I would have done the MBA because I went to the state attorney's office, and as you know, that's
Yeah.
pretty much trial team, 2.0.
Yeah.
How much experience you get, but But when you graduated, you came right back to. Well, I saw Polk County and Hillsborough County.
No, when I graduated, at the time I was engaged, so
Okay.
got married soon after I graduated, and we stayed in Miami for a time. I actually graduated in 2001 in December and passed the bar in April 2002, so
Right.
first available time. Started working in the Monroe County State
wow.
Attorney's
Okay,
office,
yeah.
which wasn't a far drive from where we were at because I was actually working in the Upper Keys office.
Okay.
And we knew that we wanted to come back to Tampa, so at the time, the Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office wasn't hiring anybody. This was about a year and a half into my practice or whatever.
What are we talking, like 2003?
Something like that. Yeah,
2004?
2003 probably. And came to Polk County State Attorney's
Sure.
office. Worked there for about a year and a half, and then got into the Hillsborough County.
How did you find Polk County State Attorney's Office compared to Hillsborough? Because as a private attorney myself, who's done some criminal defense work in both counties, there's definitely a little bit of a disparity in the process.
Well, there's a disparity in the whole tone of the town,
Well,
I think.
yeah, well, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's reflective in the state attorney's
Yeah,
office. You know,
that's
so
a good way to put it. Yeah, I would agree with that. So then, how long did you do with the Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office?
about a year as well.
Okay,
right.
now was that Ober still?
Ober, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then after that, you went straight out on your own?
No, I went into private practice, worked, did insurance defense work.
Oh, who'd you work for?
When I first left the state attorney's office, I worked for it was called Haas Lewis Dutton,
Okay.
or Haas Dutton Lewis. At the time, they all split up since then. Now there's a Dutton Law Group. He still does it, and then Ray Haas he has his own firm, I think.
Okay.
And Drew Lewis went on and did something
If I'm
else.
looking down, it's just because I always want to make sure we're recording. Don't worry about it.
No, that's fine.
So, how many years did you do that for?
I did that for a couple of years. Then I went and worked over at Battaglia Ross
Oh,
over
sure.
in St. Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know Sean McQuaid and
I do.
Aubrey?
Yeah. I know all
Okay.
those guys.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Sean McQuaid and I went to law school with each other.
Yeah.
He was about 3 times the size he is now. He's built back then, I remember.
Yeah. He used to work out all the time.
Yeah, and then at Battaglia, Sean Zanakis worked there, and I went to school
Yeah.
with his wife, Christina Battaglia.
Oh, you did? His wife is actually friends with my ex-wife.
Okay, yeah.
They went to college together, I think, at Florida. Or no, Sean went to college with my ex-wife at Florida
Oh,
State.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. We know a lot of this. And then, of course, you know my legal assistant, Don, from high school. So
Right.
6 degrees of separation.
Right.
So, how long were you at Battaglia Ross?
A couple years as well. Then I
Okay.
left there
Were you
and
doing plaintiff's work, or what were you doing there?
doing everything. I was working with Anthony Battaglia,
Yeah.
and if you know anything about him,
I do.
he'll have his hands in a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I was kind of his go-to guy at the
Sure.
time. So he was getting older, and I was looking to have some sort of
He's
better
since passed,
opportunity.
hasn't he?
He's
Yeah, a couple
yeah,
of
he
years
has.
ago.
He
Yeah.
has. And then I went to Groley and Salmon and
Okay.
did homeowners insurance defense work
Okay.
here in Tampa.
Okay.
And then left there after about 3 years there and went out on my own.
So what year was that, like 2000?
2012-ish.
12. Okay.
Yeah.
And then for your practice, what was your primary area?
Since I've gone on my own.
Yeah.
I've done, quite frankly, I've done a little bit of everything. Initially went out doing personal injury and homeowners plaintiffs work.
Like first party insurance?
Correct.
You do that as well.
Yeah, and it's morphed itself into really kind of more of a business practice, but I still do personal injury and first party property stuff.
Sure.
But as I'm sure you probably do, you find if somebody likes you, they start asking you to do all kinds of things.
Yeah, you kind of become their life attorney for
right,
everything.
right. You're their go-to guy,
So when did the idea enter your head for running for judge?
I'll be honest, when I first probably started, actually even before I started at the state attorney's office, probably when I was in law school, because much like you were discussing earlier, I mean, I was on the moot court board, so we did that kind of stuff. And then when I left, I went to the state attorney's office, and obviously you get to know the judges very well when you work at the state attorney's office. I mean, you're in their courtroom every day.
Right.
And quite frankly, I've just always felt like it was a great opportunity to give back to your community if you have the knowledge, if you have the experience, if you have the talent, to be able to serve your community like that is something that I just think is a great thing to do.
And this is your first time running, right?
Correct.
Okay, and how are you finding it? Has it exceeded your expectations as far as the time commitment?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting too, because once you tell people that you're running, I think everybody's got an opinion about what they think you should do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, yeah.
So it's interesting to hear people's different opinions, and even when you put together, a website or anything, people are like, "Oh, you should change this, or you should change this, or you should change this." Some people love it the way it is, and
Yeah, definitely a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
I think as far as guests on this show, you're the fourth or the fifth, and I kind of have this battery of questions that I go through all of them, so I get to kind of by proxy live through what you're going through. But I definitely understand it's as far as who you should be talking to, who you shouldn't be talking to, signs, shirts, all these different
Yeah.
things. And on top of being a father, on top of running your own practice, on top of everything else.
right.
I'm a father. I run my own practice, and I don't see how I could fit anything more into my life. So I got to hand it to you guys. What it is that you're doing.
It's not easy, and quite frankly, it probably would have been easier if you just didn't listen to anyone.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have an idea what you want to do with your campaign, I think, when you start off, and I don't know about most people, but for me, I wanted to stay true to who I am,
Right.
because you can go way out of bounds of who you really are once you start running a campaign. And for me, I've always been a hardworking guy. I've been a full-time single dad for 10 years. My ex lives in Miami. I run my own practice, like you said, for the past 8 years. So, I'm a nose to the grindstone kind of guy, I guess. I don't go out and network, and I don't go out to the, lawyer happy hours and
Sure,
those
yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, if I start doing those kind of things that aren't in my character, that aren't things that I normally do, not only are they going to be awkward for me, but people are going to be like, well, where'd this guy come from?
Right.
Yeah.
They're not voting for you. They're voting for whatever it is that you're putting out there.
Right.
That makes sense. Well, that actually kind of leads me into some of the things that I wanted to ask you about it. It's kind of an interesting position that you're running for. For beginning, it's apolitical. So as far as your political beliefs, those really shouldn't be of much relevance to the people voting, and they don't get to see it on the ballot. But I've found in my practice, both on the criminal bench and in the family law bench, that it does play into it. Have you considered that at all? I'm not asking you your politics, but do you think that plays into it or should play into it at all?
No, I mean, I think an interesting thing that I discovered particularly when I started running is that, there's no campaign managers or advisors out there that don't have some sort of political affiliation or
For sure,
agenda,
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
is the point. And I'm a firm believer in the independence of the courts from the other branches of government, and to be free from political influence.
Right.
So I think that in many times what you're talking about is when you go and practice in front of a judge, you can probably tell pretty early on, what his political affiliation or beliefs are. And I quite frankly think that a judge should endeavor to leave those outside the courtroom. It's their job to be unbiased and independent.
I agree. There's two examples that I've given in talking about this with people. So in family law, chapter 6113, and family law will kind of segue into that because as I've learned, evidently the chief judge here in Hillsborough, I don't know if it's been verbalized or not, but they like to start people out on the family law bench because they feel not having a jury right off the bat to contend with on top of everything else might be the best way to segue in. So it seems like we see a lot of the new judges coming through family law, but 6113 and the factors that the court looks at considering time sharing for the kids, one of them is the moral fitness of the parties. And I've found that little factor and the politics of the court, or maybe the faith of the court, which is another one, really kind of makes it, there's a kind of a spectrum of how that's applied in cases depending on which judge you have. So I just feel like in some ways the way that the legislature have written the laws, you almost can't separate the two.
I wouldn't think that that's necessarily true. I mean, I think that there is a way that you can, look at things fairly and unbiasedly, and not bring in your own personal, beliefs or political affiliations or any of those things to a case. I mean, people are certainly capable of doing that.
Sure,
Whether or not a person chooses to do that or not is a different thing.
Yeah, well, it's like the voir dire question, can you follow the law even if you don't agree with it? It's so much in the same
Correct.
way. Yeah. So another thing, as a practitioner who's in the courts a lot, I always kind of have wonder why it is that people run for judge, and obviously it's different things to different people.
Sure.
But sometimes you see that it's an ego thing or a power thing. You're vying for a position to kind of lord over people, and again, I know that's not true of everyone, but in my experience, the temperament of the court has got to be, for me as a voter and as a practitioner, the most important thing. So have you seen this in your practice of law, the kind of the difference in temperament between judges and kind of how you've...
Absolutely. I mean, but I think that you see the spectrum, and just like any other profession, you see people who you think are good at that and
Right.
people who are bad. I mean, we could go through any wide range, and judges are no different.
Sure.
Sometimes you get in there and you can clearly see, hey, this guy wants to express his rule over everybody in here. And then other times you'll go into a courtroom and the judge is very welcoming and nice and open, and so I think it's different for everybody. And to your point, it depends on temperament and personality.
Yeah.
It plays into a lot of, who you want on the bench. Sure.
Yeah. Another thing that I've seen is a lot of times when new judges come into a division, they have this idea that they're going to fix the division, and they start implementing these rules or practices that they think are somehow going to set the docket straight. And more often than not, in my experience, that happens for about 5 or 6 months, and then the sea change, everything kind of rights itself and goes back to what it was when it's come in. So have you thought about kind of anything that you want to implement coming in, depending on where you go, or any things that are important to you as far as running a docket? Or
No, I mean, look, I would be a rookie judge. I would turn to people who have been doing it for, 12 years, have had a couple of terms, and and ask them what's worked best for them.
Yeah.
I mean, because what's worked best for the guys or the girls that are experienced is probably going to be what works best for me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come in there with any new novel idea that somebody probably hasn't thought of before about how to run a docket.
Right. So your son, how old is he?
My son is 15 now.
Is he having fun with this? Are you involving him in the process?
I mean, I've involved him a little bit to the
Yeah.
extent that I can. I mean, he's extremely busy. I mean, which means I'm extremely busy.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays a lot of hockey.
Is he athletic like his dad?
Yeah, well, he plays hockey. He
Sure.
doesn't play soccer, but
Sure.
yeah, he plays hockey for Steinbrenner and plays for the Clearwater Ice Storm over in Clearwater. Last year, Steinbrenner won the state championship and went to nationals, actually. And then this year, his travel team has gone 17-1, and they're actually in the state tournament next weekend.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Sports today versus what they were when I was a kid is a different.
it's crazy.
My nephew was a pitcher. He played for Jesuit, and then he went to Vanderbilt, and then he was a minor leaguer for the Cardinals. And I got to watch. But my kids are 2 and 6, so I'm just starting softball with my daughter. But I got to watch my nephew, and you just don't get a moment to breathe. I mean, every weekend it's a championship here, there. There's this league, that league.
Oh yeah.
League. Yeah.
I mean, he plays between the two. Steinbrenner hockey just ended. They didn't do it quite as well as they did last year, so it ended a little bit earlier. But he plays on average 3-4 nights a week, and then on the weekends. So
Right.
we're busy.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure. Aside from the courtroom and the campaign, are you involved with any philanthropy at all? Have you done anything with any?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in numerous charities over the years. I mean, I've never committed myself really to any of them because, I've been a single dad and also run my own practice and
For
those
sure.
things. But actually, because he's going to be able to start driving here, he's turning 16 in
Oh
June.
wow,
So,
that's scary.
yeah, he's going to be able to get himself to practices and things of that nature. I'm going to have a little bit more time on my hands. So I just actually started with the training with the Guardian Ad Litem program. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, I'm excited about doing that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, no, those are well needed. I do some dependency work, and then of course the family law. So
Yeah.
I'm big on giving judges some assistance in looking at what's going on in a case and not having to figure it out in an 8-hour trial. So those guardian ad litem definitely can help in that regard.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, it's an opportunity to kind of speak to the people who are going to be voting for you. Do you have anything you want to say as far as why you think you're qualified for the job, or what you hope to achieve on the bench, that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I think that I bring the requisite legal experience. Obviously, I have 18 years of legal experience. I've handled cases in over 15 different practice areas during my legal career. So my breadth of legal experience is wide. It's not narrow. I didn't just do 1 or 2 practice areas for the past 18 years. Combined with that, obviously, my personal experience in raising my own son by myself for 10 years gives me the ability to understand what families go through when they get divorced and have to have situations like that. Plus, I'm a hardworking guy, not just, in my family life and in my professional life, but I also involved in a lot of athletics. I just did an Ironman in
Or did you really?
2016. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Colorado. So
I've been struggling with the health component of life, but yeah.
yeah, so I try and keep all that stuff up. I got a lot of balls in the air, and I think that's an important quality for a judge to be able to juggle a lot of different things going on. Clearly, you have a lot of different cases and things of that nature. And to be honest with you, I mean, I just want to use my knowledge, experience, the talents that I have to give back to the community that, quite frankly, has given me so many opportunities.
Now it's just you and Greg in this group right now. When's the deadline to put your name in?
Middle of April.
Okay, so we're coming up to about two-ish months away.
Right.
And then if it's just the two of you, it's just the general election, right? Or
No, it'd be just in the primary,
Okay.
August 18th. It'll be
August
decided then.
okay, great.
Yeah.
And if people want to find you, do you have a website, social media, that sort of thing?
I do. You can go to votebonavita.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Vote Bonavita, and then you can also find it on Instagram at Vote Bonavita.
And what's your firm's?
Bonavita Law Firm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming by today. It was a pleasure talking to you. I wish you good luck. I know it's quite an effort, and I wish you well.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciated being here.
All right, take care.